I wouldn't know it.
There's two in the waiting room that I do not recognize.
Okay. They might be, let's see.
Jordan Bartholomew is a Greenacres student.
Not one of mine.
Jordan, do you have a reason to be here?
Oh, they're in the waiting room.
Oh, right, can't even
You
talk
can
to them,
message
huh?
them. You can message them, but they can't message back.
I'll just remove him.
Good morning, Mrs. Chase. I made you a co-host as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Juliana Derkuk is also a Greenacres student, but not in your class. Does she have a
Correct.
reason to be here?
I don't know who she is.
Okay.
That James might be my guy from NASA. I can't remember. No.
Mrs. Chase, Jordan Bartholomew is requesting to be in the meeting. He's not in Mr. Moore's class.
He's not in Mr. Moore's class. Mr. Moore, I think we were limiting this just to your students. Is that right?
That was my understanding. Yes, it was current Greenacre students that have 8th grade science. We may be able to do this again next quarter, and maybe he will be in my class, but right now
I'll just drop a message into the waiting room to let kids know if they don't have Mr. Moore or Miss Kettner, they wouldn't be able to join this.
All right. So I'm going to get started real quick. Hello, I'm Mrs. Kettner, Selkirk science teacher. Welcome to not only the Selkirk kids, but Greenacres kids. Our guest of honor should be here shortly.
She's here.
she's here.
Please be on your best behavior. I have your questions that you formed in advance. So you can always send me a message in the chat. There's no guarantee I will get your question at this point, okay? So make sure we represent our two schools in a positive manner. All right, are you guys ready? You excited? You gotta give Ann some love when she comes in, okay? Make sure you, maybe a little camera is on, maybe. All right, here we go. Someone wanna let her in? And,
I'm here.
oh wait, where is she? Oh, there she is, hello. Real quick, I think, is John Stevens gonna join us as well?
Yeah, he said he would be here kind of right on time. So
Okay.
I'm taking a look on Zoom, how I share my screen. Okay, I see it when we need it.
I will make you a co-host and then you should have those. Well, in fact, I could just, you might be able to share your screen now.
Yep, it looks like I can.
So all of you guys, if you want, you can also pin our guest. You can go to the top right of her video and pin her so she remains the only person on your screen if you choose to, okay? Are we ready to go? Oh, that James is That's our NASA guy. It's got to be. If not, we'll just kick him out. All right, I think we're ready to go. Are we ready to go? So, Anne, hi, I'm Rachel Kettner, and I teach at Selkirk Middle School, the newest middle school in Central Valley School District here, just outside of Spokane, but we're still Spokane County. So I was told I get the honor of introducing you and you're going over a brief bio. Do you have that, or do you want me to?
We can do it either way. I have a little bit of a presentation that has some pictures if we can get it to work. Otherwise, you know, I can talk through it if we don't get it to work. Hopefully, I have some videos that I hope will play, because when I was in 8th grade, the best part was when the teacher wheeled the TV in. And so I figured maybe you guys would like to see some videos of space and things like that. So we can do whatever you think is best.
Well, when it comes to experts with your bio, I would say you're probably better at it than myself. So I'm going to actually make you the host, and then you can share your screen then. So as I stumble through this, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, go for it, and I will mess with the controls.
Sure thing. And it looks like I have a share screen button, so I'll try to do that in just a second. But anyway, like Mrs. Kittner said, I am actually from Spokane, Washington, and I grew up some on the South Hill, some on the North Side, but you know, I played sports and ran around to all the same restaurants and drove up and down the same streets you did. So I hope what you take away after we chat a little bit about this is that my job and my career path is one of many that is open to you. And you're growing up in just an amazing area of the country. There are so many things and opportunities at your fingertips. And so as I talk today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I chose to do. But the important thing is that I chose to do what was my passion, which for me was becoming an astronaut. But as you listen to some of the advice I'm going to give you, I want you to think about the fact that this is how you pursue a passion and make it a career. It's not just about being an astronaut, because I bet there's some people that want to be astronauts here, but I bet we have a huge range of what you guys want to do when you're older. And then some of you don't really know what you want to do when you're older, and that's great too. But I bet that all of you know what excites you, right? What really, you know, you feel passionate about. And it could be becoming a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, or maybe it's playing basketball or dancing ballet or playing an instrument in a symphony. All of these things, whatever it is in your mind, I want you to picture that thing when I talk to you, and just kind of maybe you can pick up on a couple nuggets that'll help you pursue your passion. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my passion. Maybe there's some of you that are not sure what you want to do, and this is going to be something you're going to learn a little bit about what it means to work at NASA and to be an astronaut, and maybe it'll be something that interests you. So I'll try to save questions for the end. I'm going to show you a few slides, just a few pictures of my time in space. And really quickly, Mrs. Kettner, we have until for about 45 minutes, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, great. Well, we'll try to save some questions for the end. So if you have some really good ones, maybe think about them. And I don't know how you guys normally do your class, but maybe you can put them in your chat, and some of your teachers can help me pick some good ones out at the end. But I'm from Spokane, Washington. I graduated from Gonzaga Prep High School. And then I went on to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, which is a military academy. It's like a university college, but it's also, you're joining the Army. It's a military academy. So I studied mechanical and aerospace engineering out of West Point. And then right after West Point, I became an Army officer. I immediately went to graduate school. So I went and got 2 master's degrees, aerospace engineering and international relations, which is something that's important. Like, you know, math and science is always my passion, but I went and did this thing for a couple of years where I really dove in and learned about something else, right? How does our world work? It's a really good question, especially with the election yesterday, is, you know, how does our world work? How does government work? How does international government work? No matter what job you choose, you need to understand these things. So I think when I was your age, I probably hyper-focused on the things I loved, like math. And I probably didn't pay attention as much in some things that I didn't find as exciting. But what I learned later was, holy cow, we have got to understand things that even if we're not passionate about them, to be good citizens. So then I became an Army helicopter pilot after graduate school, and I started flying Kiowa Warriors, and I did that for about 10 years. Kiowa Warrior is a small attack helicopter in the Army, and I was a pilot and a commander and deployed to combat a couple times. Then I decided I wanted to go back to using my math, so I became a test pilot. And for those of you that don't know what a test pilot is, I used to think it was just somebody that got in an airplane and tried to fly really fast or do really cool flips, and there's part of that. We do that. But the tricky part that I realized was it's like using your math and designing your flights and trying to use math to figure out an airplane. So you can either start with a bunch of numbers and then go design an airplane, or you can get to an airplane and say, how does this really work? What are the limits? And you go from the airplane, you do fly a bunch of tests on it, and then you come back and you create a graph and you say, this is how this airplane flies. And what was really amazing about that experience was I actually had to trust my math skills with my life for the first time, because I designed flight tests that were on the very edge of the envelope of what the airplane was capable of. And then I went and flew those based just on my math. And holy cow, that is humbling. I don't know if in math, if your teacher uses the abbreviation SOHCAHTOA, sine is opposite over hypotenuse and cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. If that doesn't sound familiar, I promise it will pretty soon. But I remember sitting in that aircraft about to do a high bank in the aircraft and just thinking, holy cow, was it adjacent over hypotenuse or hypotenuse over adjacent? Just doing a little geometry in my mind. So it's math comes to life. I know it's all just on paper right now, but I promise you, that's what I loved about engineering, is it was like math that came to life. So when I was, after being a test pilot, I applied to NASA and I became an astronaut in 2013. And I flew to the space station 5 years later in 2018, which I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of right now. We're going to pick it up from there. Let's see, I hope that this screen shares correctly. And I think we're gonna do it like this. And I'm gonna share my sound. And I'm gonna test a video. And Mrs. Kettner, I can see you, and I can also see Miss Walton and Harms, Miss Gabri Harms. I can see you guys. So when I play this and I can hear, and you hear the audio, I want you to give me a thumbs up to make sure it's working, okay? And give me 1 second here. Let me find a good one with some audio. All right, I got it. Thanks, Gabri. I see your thumbs up. That means it's going to work, and we're going to get some good pictures. Yeah. All right, and I'm going to keep this screen a little bit small so I can still see your smiling faces while I talk. If I make this full screen, then I don't get to see you, and that's not as fun. All right, so this is a picture of me out on a spacewalk. And yes, that's the Earth right over my shoulder. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how we got there, right? Because something that I quickly realized is, I always pictured being an astronaut, just like you guys picture that passion that you have that we talked about that's in your mind. And something that I learned was to go from where you're sitting to go to where I'm sitting, or wherever you want to sit when you're my age, which I won't tell you what that is. It's a lot of work. And when I got selected to be an astronaut, I actually kind of stepped back and went, wow, that was even more work than I thought it was. But you guys are in such a great time, 8th grade, junior high, early high school. That's a really good time to start really thinking about, how am I going, what am I passionate about, and how do you get there? Like, you guys need to have all the fun that you're having and all the, you're taking all the classes, but like, what do I want to do next, right? Like, one of the things I always did when I was in your shoes is I always thought a couple of years ahead, and so if you're in 8th grade right now, maybe you're thinking, by the time I'm a junior in high school, like, what do I want? What do I want my grade point average to look like? What kind of clubs do I want to have done? Is there an accomplishment I want to have done in sports? Like, kind of start thinking that way, right? And then when you get to the middle of high school, you have to start going, okay, what college am I going to go to? Or maybe I'm going to join the military, or maybe I'm going to go work after high school. That's when you always want to think a couple years ahead, because one of my favorite sayings is that if you aim for nowhere, you'll get there. But if you aim for something, you can get there too. So it's better to aim for something. So this is me when I was 3 years old. And this is, I want to tell you about the power of a dream. I was 3 years old right here in this when I went to preschool for the first time out in Suncrest, out of the north side of Spokane. And that day I went to school, my mom said that, some of the other kids were crying. And I actually told her, well, I'm going to school to learn to be an astronaut. And I just went into preschool because I thought that's when astronaut school started. And I was a little disappointed that we didn't start learning about flying in space. But something that I did learn, or that I look back on now, is that all those lessons that you're learning right now, that you started learning in preschool like me, and that you will learn in high school, even if you don't think they directly apply to your dream, they really do, right? And so we'll talk about that a little bit. So my home started here in Spokane, Washington. And this is where I got to fly to in 2018. This is the International Space Station. And for all of you on the call that are less than 20 years old, did you know that you have never been alive when an astronaut was not living in space? And you guys are some of the first people to be able to say that. We first sent astronauts to live on the International Space Station in the year 2000, which is well before some of you were born, most of you were born. And we have had it continuously crewed with astronauts since then. So it's kind of hard to tell from this picture, but if you take a look at this picture, can you guys see my mouse when I move it? Gabri, give me another thumbs up if you can see my mouse moving. Thanks, Gabri. All right, so this is the International Space Station. This right here, you guys see all the round spots? The round parts of the space station are what we call the pressurized modules. That's where we can live inside of. And the inside space in the space station is about the size of like a 3 or 4 bedroom house. And we go for 6 months at a time, and the inside is like a giant science lab. Everywhere on the walls, you'll see a bunch of science. I'll show you some inside pictures of it. So that all happens in here. Now the truss, this big piece that goes left or right, we don't live inside of that truss. This is where all the electronics and computers and electricity runs. It's where our batteries are. It's where some science experiments are too, but we don't actually go out there unless we're in a spacesuit. And then these big pieces on the sides right here that you see, these are called the solar arrays. So everything is solar powered up on space station. And so this is what captures the sun, the energy from the sun, and it comes down and it brings them into batteries right here. And that gives us all of our power on the space station. Now, something that's interesting is that at nighttime, those don't gather sunlight, right? So how do we keep the lights on at night? Well, we transfer all of that solar power into batteries, and we use the batteries at nighttime. But what's interesting is that our days and nights are not like here on Earth. We're going so fast around the space station. We're only about 250 miles off the surface of the Earth. So that's like the distance from you to Seattle. It's really not that far. If you got in a car and drove straight up, you'd be there just like you would in Seattle, like 5 or 6 hours, right? But we're going 11,500 miles an hour around the world, which means every 45 minutes, we have a sunrise or a sunset. And so for 45 minutes, we're gathering electricity, and then for 45 minutes, we're using it all. And that's what our house looks like. Now, if you were to take this whole space station and lay it on top of a football field, these solar arrays right here would lay right in the end zones. So that's about how big it is. It's pretty huge. And this was my view from the inside. So on the bottom of the space station, we have a little bay window, and we call it the cupola. And this is me looking out the cupola. One of the things that I've learned the farther I've gone from home is that one of my favorite things always to do is to look back at home. And so we spent a lot of time right here in these windows looking back at the Earth. And this right here, it's hard on the virtuals. I would love to have you guys shouting out answers where you think this is, but you can just shout it out quietly to yourself. this is what our home looks like from space. So right in here are the Cascade Mountains. And then we're kind of right over in here. Actually, a little bit lower than that, right in here. Spokane. This is actually a shot of Seattle. So this is what Seattle looks like. And this is just taken with a normal camera. It's just taken with a little handheld camera, probably like a lot of you guys have. In fact, if I had a phone up there, I could take a picture like this from my phone, but we didn't take phones up there. There's not really good cell phone signal up there. If you look right down in here, this arrow, that is pointing to Spokane. So every now and then, my mom still lives there on the south side, and I would call her as I was flying over and looking at her. And if you didn't know it, you can actually go outside and look up at the space station. You can see it flying over. And there's an app, and maybe Mrs. Kettner can help you guys track some of the space station appearances. You can Google it, you can look it up and just say, you know, ISS tracker, space station tracker, anything along those lines. And there's lots of different ways to tell exactly where it's going over. So you just put in your zip code and you find out when it is, and it looks like a really fast star kind of passing over. So every now and then when I knew that we'd be passing over right when it was like dusk or dawn, which is when you can really see it really well, I would call my mom on the phone, and I would sit in that bay window, and she would go out into her driveway and talk to me and looking up, and she'd be able to see me flying over, and I'd be able to see this right here. This was actually a picture that I took and sent her while I was talking to her and said, the arrow is where you are. So that's pretty fun. And then at nighttime, we get really good shots. This is what Spokane looks like at night. So this is downtown right here. And then you see this kind of comes out, I-90 out here. If you go up and down, this is Division. You know, and this is out like Meade, Whitworth area out here, South Hills up here. This is where High Drive kind of drops off. You come out here, this is where Spokane Airport is, Fairchild Airport out here, or Fairchild Air Force Base out here. And then you guys are out here in the valley. I bet you guys live all over here. So that's what our home looks like from space at nighttime. All right, who's ready for a video? I can hear you all the way from Spokane. Let's watch a little video, and I'm going to show you about my launch and what it's like to be on the space station for a little bit. Whoops, I'm sorry, extra click.
I wanted to be an astronaut from the time I was 3 or 4 years old. I remember telling my mom at that time, and I never deviated from what I wanted to be. Something about exploration has fascinated me from a young age.
That's the space station that we saw for the first time out our window. So we're approaching it to go dock onto it. So from me on the left to me on the right. And one of the things I want to tell you guys is, you know, when you look at astronauts or you look at anybody else that has achieved their dreams, or, you know, sometimes it's hard to see yourself in that spot. And what I want to tell you is that that girl on the right, the one that's in the spacecraft, still feels exactly like that girl on the left. You know, that kid from Spokane. I'm always just going to be a kid from Spokane no matter where we go, but kids from Spokane can go places. And I think you guys will too. So what are some of the things that we did in space? I'm going to play you another short video, and this is going to be from inside of the space station. It's going to show you how we do science. Okay, so when you go to science class or math class or any other classes, and right now you guys are learning like the building blocks, right? You guys are at the building block phase, which means you're learning the basic equations, and you guys are learning the basic concepts that you're going to build on every day and every year. Because nobody starts out where I am. Nobody starts out as an astronaut. Nobody starts out as a professional, right? They start where you are. They start in class. They start with the blocks. And I know sometimes it can feel really overwhelming and like a really long path, but what your job is every day is to put another block on the building blocks. And I promise you that if you keep putting building blocks on your learning, you're gonna get places. And so when you start with science and 8th grade science, junior high science, and you keep putting building blocks on, you end up where I did, or you can end up where I did, which was doing science on the space station. So what does science with a couple extra building blocks look like? Take it up to microgravity. Here's a little bit of a video of inside of the space station of what we did.
The International Space Station is a national orbiting laboratory. Every single day we are answering big questions about Earth and about space, about where we came from and about where we're going. But the other thing that we're doing is we're learning more questions to ask. And so the question really, I think that's important to say is, who are we if we stop exploring? Every day is the intersection of the magical and the technical. Our jobs require a lot of focus, a lot of heads down, detailed work, but there's always moments throughout every day that you step back and you realize, you know, we're working off the planet in microgravity in one of the most unforgiving environments known to mankind. It's really incredible. As a society, we've always had this necessity to explore, to go across oceans and then across lands, and then we've discovered all the lands, and then we took to flight, and now we take to space flight, and now we're going deep space flight. Human beings have always wondered what's out there. And to me, it's not what's out there, is there something better out there? I don't think that's why we ask the question. To me, it's not what's out there, is there something better? It's what's out there so that we can understand the context in which we're living. At the end of all of our exploring, it is to come home and to share the stories and to understand our context, where we came from, where we're going. Knowing how far we were from Earth, and I only had this thin vinyl separating.
That's the view when you go out to the space station for the first time on a spacewalk.
Incredible. They say go ahead and exit the space station, and you come out, and I remember that was the first time I really got the sensation that I was being pulled by gravity. I was close to Earth, and I was very reliant on physics at that moment because I was holding onto the space station with one hand, and my feet were dangling. I remember, you know, not just through my visor, but looking down and just feet in the nose. I mean, it's just incredible. Everything looked so large. But again, the most significant realization to me was looking out and realizing not how far I was from Earth, but how close I was to Earth, and how connected I was to Earth, and how, you know, we on the space station plus everybody on Earth and this planet is actually so small compared to this vastness of outer space. I think one of the feelings that I brought back with me was, you know, you do feel this closeness to every human on Earth. You have this really distinct recognition that every single person you will ever meet, you have more in common with than you do different, no matter what. And I feel this kind of overwhelming responsibility to communicate that somehow. You know, I think sometimes when people start talking about humanity and unity, and, you know, it can get brushed off as that's not realistic. And feel like, wait, no, that is realistic. That is real. I mean, we are experiencing that. We really do have more in common than we do different. And no matter where we go up, everybody looks up at the sky for what else is out there. And so to communicate that and to try to unify people, not by a common fear, not by, you know, an us versus them, but a common human instinct to explore and to be part of something.
All right, I'm going to kind of skip around some slides because I want to leave some time to answer your questions. So what we did on Space Station, we did a lot of maintenance. We had to fix things. We had to do a lot of cleaning. Sometimes it's just vacuuming, changing air filters, things like that. We do science. You guys saw some of that. If you look on the picture on the right, that science included us being the guinea pigs. I donated a lot of blood to science, and you have to draw it yourself. As an engineer that doesn't like getting shots, that was kind of a big hurdle I had to get over and learn how to do, but I did it. Robotics, this is driving right here where I'm pointing. You can see a robotic arm. And when a cargo vehicle, like this vehicle right here, comes up to the space station that just has stuff inside of it, we reach out with the arm and we grab it. So on the left here, that's me flying the robotic arm while my crewmate David assists me over the shoulder. Spacewalks, lots of preparation, lots of execution. You guys saw some shots of it. It's a pretty special place to be out there, but the preparation I cannot understate. And so that's one of the big things I want you guys to think about or take away from today is it's not as easy as it looks, and it doesn't look that easy. And that goes really for every profession. There's going to be late nights, lots of studying, lots of times where you're just downright afraid you're going to fail. That never stops. You know, I'm sure some of you guys get nervous for the first day of class, for a sports team tryout, for going to a new place, for trying a new instrument. That stuff where inside your mind you're going, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be successful. I'm a little scared about this. Well, here's a big secret. The astronaut that you see on your screen right now feels the exact same way 40 years later, sitting in my seat when I'm going on a spacewalk. I have that exact same inside voice. So the best thing that you can do right now at your age is to learn how to deal with that. And you do that by getting out of your comfort zone, by intentionally trying things out that you don't know if you're going to pass or you don't know if you're going to be good at. So I want you guys all to think about something that maybe you haven't done because you're scared of failing. Maybe you wanted to be on your school baseball team and you thought, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to that kid down sitting next to me. And so I'm just not even going to try. Well, I want you to challenge yourself, each person, to find something that you haven't done because you're worried about it or you're scared of it. And I want you to go do it. And then even if you fail at that, you go home and you say, you know what? I got out of my comfort zone. That's the goal of it, right? If you make the baseball team, that's a bonus, but going out and trying and pushing yourself, that's a life skill that to be successful, you're going to need to do. And you can ask your teachers. I'm going to put your teachers on the spot. Next time you're in a class and you have a question for them, ask them about getting out of their comfort zone, because I bet every single one of them has a story about trying something that they were afraid to do and they overcame it. And then it led them to where they are today. So I want you to, that's something you got to practice now. So now the only difference is I still get worried about it, but I've learned that that's what bravery is, right? Bravery isn't just going out and doing things like spacewalks. Bravery is being scared about going out and doing something like that and doing it anyway, right? I'm gonna say that one more time. Bravery is being scared and doing it anyway. And you can practice that skill right now. And you've got to start now so that when you're doing the even like really big stuff when you're adults, you're going to know that feeling and you're going to have the confidence to move forward with it. All right, lots of fun. You got to take a fun selfie while you're out there, right? I definitely turned the camera on myself and with Earth behind me. This is us changing the batteries. All this whole spacewalk was just to go out and change some batteries. This is me right here in the red. Some really good views. There's my crewmate peeking up at me. Some exercise. We exercised every single day for 2 hours so that our bones stayed strong and muscles stayed strong. And then, of course, even in space, we have some fun, right? So up on the top right, that was when I first got to space station and my crewmate had to teach me how to wash my hair with no gravity. So that was a team hair wash right there. On the left, occasionally we got a little visitor. I got a stuffed Earth come up and visit me. And on the bottom right, this is what a feast looks like. So everything has to be taped to the table. These little packets are our food. One of our cargo vehicles brought us up some fresh onions. So we had some of that, and these are all cheeses. And then this is our flashlight candle for dinner. We had candlelight dinner every night. We celebrated holidays. On the left side, you can see I'm kind of satisfied and grinning, sitting there and looking at my crewmates going around this entire module. It's kind of hard to see, but they're carrying big bags. This was on Easter, and I decided to take all 200 coffee packets that we had on space station and hide them like an Easter egg hunt. So this is my crewmates doing an Easter egg hunt. This is Christmas. This is our fire right here. Obviously we can't have real fire up there, so we did the computer fire. And then we had a lot of fun with no gravity, and this is the last video, and then I want to take some questions.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Down. Wait, you can't hold on, Tommy. They're gonna think you're pulling. What?
Yeah, so even up in space, we still act like kids. So I'm gonna jump all the way forward to, where are my lessons here? Right here. Work together. You're not gonna do anything alone. So right now, start learning how to work together. It's not about the dreaming, it's about the doing and getting out of your comfort zone. So remember, like I said, I want you guys to think of something. That's my challenge to you, is to think of something and challenge yourself to do it because you just don't know where you're going to end up. Kids from Spokane can do anything. So Ms. Kettner, at this time, I would love to hand it over to any questions that you or the class have.
All right, I have a ton of questions that the kids gave me in advance. And so like this one I think ties into our current situation. How do you handle isolation in space?
Yeah, so you know what's funny is that when I was in space, I didn't feel as isolated as sometimes I do on Earth. And I don't know if that's because we were being intentional about interacting with each other, but something that we were on the space station, and there's, you know, especially during COVID right now, something that's important to remember is that this time period is going to end, right? It is not always going to be like this. You know, you've probably heard that our country went through a pandemic almost 100 years ago, or just over 100 years ago. And guess what? It ended. It lasted a really long time, but it ended. And one of my crewmates said it best. When you get frustrated and you're like, why can't I go out? Why am I at home with my family still? I'm so tired of playing another board game with my dad. You know, like all these things that you guys have probably thought about. At some point this is going to end, and when it does, you're going to look back at this time and you're going to miss something that you're doing right now. And I know that's kind of hard to believe, but maybe you're going to miss that extra family time that you're having. Maybe you're going to miss playing with your siblings. You know, maybe you're going to miss more home cooked meals. Whatever it is, there might be something you're going to miss. And so I challenge you to find the things that you're going to miss, even when you get frustrated. Find the things that you think maybe you're going to miss and just try to be in that moment, right? We can, and one of the things that I learned in space is that you can control your emotions by what you let yourself think about. And you can only think about one thing at a time. So when you're sitting at home and you're frustrated, you can either think about all the things that you can't do, or you can think about all the things that you can do. And if you want to be happier, control your emotions, think about all the things you can do. What can you do to help your parents? What can you do to help your teachers? What can you do to be a better classmate? Maybe one of your friends is also feeling lonely and you can have a video conversation with them and just spend half an hour together in the evening. So try to think about what you can do. Don't let yourself get into a negative thought process about what you can't do.
Awesome, thank you. So how do you effectively communicate with others on the International Space Station and those different astronauts or cosmonauts that speak different languages?
Yeah, so before we go up to space station, the two main languages on space station are English and Russian. So every crew member from any country, no matter what their background, has to know both English and Russian. So we learned Russian. Took about 2 years to get to a kind of a conversational level in Russian, but when you saw us on that launch vehicle, we launched from Russia. And so all of our communications with the ground were all in Russian. And so part of that was learning languages. And I tell you what made that easier for me was learning Spanish in junior high and high school and taking a language. And it wasn't so much about that I needed to learn Spanish, but it was understanding how to learn another language. And that's a skill that you guys can work on too. The other part about communication is, communication is a two-way street. It's not just you telling other people. It's you at the end saying, does that make sense? Did you understand? Can you tell me what I just said? Did you understand? And oftentimes we found that we had to ask those clarifying questions at the end to ensure that the right message was passed. And that's something that I've actually gotten better about even when I speak to my friends in English. I say, does that make sense? Does it, or do I sound like this? And so really being cognizant of how that person is understanding your words.
Okay, thank you. Natalie W. asks, what if any similarities are there between an airplane and the Soyuz spacecraft?
Yeah, so one of the big similarities between the two, obviously, is that we fly through the air. The difference is an airplane relies on its wings to fly. And that's one of the things about being a test pilot that we were like, we want to talk about, well, if we want to fly this far and this fast, how big should our wings be? How much lift should they provide? What type of material should they be made out of? But we rely on our wings. And if you lose an engine in an airplane, that airplane still flies. It's going to start descending, but it still flies, even if your engine quits. The difference is with a spacecraft is when you are not in space, but in a spacecraft, you are either going straight up because you're attached to a rocket, or you're going straight down, and therefore you need a parachute to land. There's nothing about the spacecraft that will inherently fly. Now, a joke we used to have when we were designing airplanes at test pilot school was, hey, anything will fly with enough thrust. And that's very true about a spacecraft. That spacecraft, that little spacecraft that you saw, it was no bigger than about that I flew to space station in. It was about the size of a minivan. And so it's not that big, but it takes an entire 30-story rocket to make that minivan get to space. And we get to space in 8.5 minutes just by sheer force. And then by the time we get up to space, those parts of the rocket fall off, and then we fly. One of the biggest similarities between the two is that both of them require a pilot who is trained in emergency decisions, understanding that the inputs that you make to that vehicle can result in life or death. And so we train a lot in aircraft because we have to have that type of attention and training to fly spacecraft.
Okay. Abby N. asks, what is the most difficult thing about being in space?
The hardest thing about being in space was being away from the people I love. And that really struck me. I've always been a very independent person. I've always lived all around the world. I haven't really lived back in Spokane since I left for college. But when I was in space, all I wanted to do was be back in Spokane with my family and friends. That's the one big thing that I missed. And after my flight, I've come to appreciate it a lot more. So that's like what I was talking about. What are you going to miss when this time period is over? What are you going to miss? It seems like forever before you guys go to college, but I'm sure all your teachers agree with me. 4 to 5 years is not that long. And many of you are not going to be living in Spokane anymore. And believe it or not, you're going to look back and wish you could spend more time with these friends and these family that you have now. So that's the hardest part, is being away from family.
Francesca asks, how do you feel about people being on Mars? And would you like to travel there?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for space travel. I'll go wherever the train's going. I think that we will get to Mars. Right now, NASA is focused on the moon. That's one of the projects I'm working on right now, is helping to design the next lunar lander. So hopefully by the time you guys are midway through high school, we're going to be putting people back on the moon. And the reason we're doing that is to practice setting up systems that we'll end up using on Mars. And so, I told you that the space station is only 250 miles off the surface of the Earth, Spokane to Seattle. The moon is 250,000 miles away. So to get back from the space station to Earth takes us 3 hours. We can be anywhere on Earth in 3 hours. So if we have a medical emergency, I can be in a hospital in like 3.5 hours. When we go to the moon, that's 250,000 miles away. Now it's going to take us 3 days to get back if we have a medical emergency. And so you're sort of reliant on the planet still. You can have direct communications. You can, if something bad breaks, like Apollo 13 had a big failure, they got back to Earth relatively quickly. Now, when we go to Mars, that's 33 million miles away. okay? That is way far. Now we're talking the order of months. If something breaks, we need to be able to fix it. If I have a medical emergency, my crew better be able to handle it. Okay, so what we call it, that's planetary independent. We are now living independent of Earth. And so it's not as simple as, I hear a lot of people say, well, we went to the moon, why are we going again? Let's just go to Mars. And it's like, guys, if you're gonna go to climb Mount Everest, you need to set up your tent in the backyard to make sure it works first. And that's what the moon is. But we are gonna get to Mars. I don't know when, but humans will get to Mars.
So right now with our unit that all the kids are studying is Mars exploration. So kind of putting you on the spot, but if you had to pick one, what would you say the biggest challenge is when it comes to exploring Mars?
I think it's that planetary independence piece, right? It's that there are so many things, and I don't know, the audio on the video may not have come across real well, but when you do scientific research and exploration, we have these funny things called like known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknowns, okay? The known knowns is like, hey, I know that a human being needs this much food and these temperatures and this pressure to stay alive. Like we know those things, right? So then we go to the space station and we go, okay, we think we know how to keep a human alive on space station. And then we go, wait a minute, these guys are losing bone density like crazy. That was a unknown, right? It was a surprise. We didn't know that we didn't know it. Okay, and so space station, I said, we've been up there 20 years now. And every day we are discovering new questions that we didn't even think to ask yet. Now we're learning those at a lower rate than we were 15, 20 years ago, much lower, but there are still things that surprise us on space station. And in the back of every person's mind is, what if we would have come across this on a Mars mission and we could not just replace this part? We could not just launch a new one. We could not just bring people back if this got really bad. So it's trying to narrow down that list and be comfortable that there's not going to be a bunch of unknown unknowns. And every time on space station, when we reach back and we rely on Earth, we go, uh-oh, I don't know if we can get there yet. It's so complex to get to Mars. We're gonna get there. Humans are gonna get there. Humans are an amazing species and we're explorers. So it's gonna happen, but it's harder than you think. And so I think planning the mission and the contingencies is the hardest thing.
Okay, so last question, and I know you kind of gave some advice for all the students here. You have one piece of advice for aspiring scientists, engineers, astronauts. What would that be?
Yeah, so we did talk about some of them, but a big takeaway I think is to not self-eliminate. Even when you fail, even when it gets hard, self-eliminate means you quit before you try, or you quit before someone else tells you. And I remember one time I had somebody tell me, somebody whose opinion I valued, tell me like, look, you're not gonna be an astronaut. Like you need to think something more realistic. And my parents had always been supportive. They had always said, you can do whatever you want, but it's gonna be harder than you think. But this person was just like flat out like, you can't do this. And when I was your age, I wasn't real secure in myself. Like who are like all of us are just trying to figure out who we are and what we want to do. And are we good enough, right? Like there's nobody that's, in junior high or high school that's really got it all together and knows everything. And so, and so those words were really devastating to me. And I went home and I told my mom about him and she said, well, does that person work for NASA? And I said, well, no. And she goes, well, then you keep going. She goes, you keep going until NASA tells you no. And her point was, it doesn't matter how many people believe in you if you believe in yourself. And then you find the people that believe in you and you ignore everybody else and you keep going. Because I will tell you, I have met so many people that say, I have wanted to be an astronaut since I was 5. And I say, oh, did you apply last round? And they say, no, I decided not to get my degree, or I decided to stop. I decided to go do something else. 99.99% of people that wanted to be astronauts that didn't become astronauts did it because they chose at some point along the route not to do it. And that's the same for every profession. Keep your name in the hat. Don't give up. Even when you fail, don't give up. We have an astronaut in my class that has a PhD in physics that failed the first physics class he took in high school. Like flat out F, had to repeat it. He now has a PhD in physics and he's an astronaut. He didn't give up. So don't give up. Don't self-eliminate. Keep moving forward.
All right. Well, thank you. Time just totally flew. I'm going to ask all the kids if you can thank our astronaut, Anne McClain, for her time. Give her a wave or something before you guys head out. And we truly appreciate your time today. It's great to hear from someone that's actually been in space. So we thank you so much, and thanks for talking to us Spokane people.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel right at home in Spokane. I'm jealous of some of the restaurant choices you guys have. I miss being up there.
Yeah. All right. Well, the kids, you guys are excused. And then Anne, we're going to stay on. Oh, nice. Got a thank you sign from Sam. Thanks, Sam. So we'll have Sam Adams from KHQ News. I'm sure you're familiar with our news stations. I'm not sure if the spokesman review is going to stay on as well. I have a student that will stay, but Sam is going to talk to you first because I know your time is short. So we're just going to get the rest of the kids out of the call, and then Sam Adams, you can take over.
Great. Thank you. Boy, what a talk, by the way. That was amazing. That's the best presentation I've ever seen.
Well, good. From the living room.
Yeah.
Didn't travel.
I've been listening to my fair share of speeches over the last couple of days, and yours was the best.
There's been a lot of speeches, yes.
There's been a lot of talk.
Yes, there has.
Well, one of the things you already talked about, so I don't even need to ask you about that. So that was great. By the way, Mrs. Kettner, you have an amazing class who, if they're not future astronauts, would make great future journalists. They were asking some great questions.
Oh, thank you.
I will echo that. Actually, we don't get a lot of new questions, but we got some new questions there. So you can pass on to them my thank yous too. Those are the type of questions we usually get from a college audience. So
Great.
They're pretty amazing.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
Are we clear? Is this the room we'll have? Is this good for you, Mrs. Kettner? I know you by another name, but I'm just going to keep on.
Yeah, you can call me. It looks good. We've got yep. We just have our adults and then our one student, Olivia. She's our
Great.
special guest.
Okay, awesome.
Olivia's an aspiring astronaut, Anne.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
we'll start with Anne, right? Okay. I guess the first thing, sorry to be corny here, but I'm a dad, so a little bit of dad humor for you. As an astronaut, you are in very many ways a pioneer of distance learning. Can you tell us about how you can kind of teach all of us a little bit about what it means to be a distance learner?
Sure, that's I've never thought about it like that, but I think you're right. We do a lot of learning over the course of 6.5 months via slideshows and emails and phone conversations. And I think the thing to remember with distance learning is that you're not always just it's not this like faceless receive mode, right? When you're distance learning, there is a very real human on the other side of that learning that is pushing you that information. And it's even more important to communicate with distance learning, which is, not just sending your message, but also making sure that it's received on the other end. And so I think being diligent and detail oriented and open to different learning styles and understanding what's important. I've never been an 8th grader having to distance learn. So I really admire everybody. And I think that that's going to be a skill set that's important as it's a much more computer-based generation. But I think the more important thing is to remember that there's a human on the other side. And if there's ever a question or a doubt, pick up the phone and call that human and say, hey, what does this mean? Help me out.
Why is it so important now for you to share your message and to be able to speak to kids, because it's unprecedented what they're going through right now? Why is it so important that you have this opportunity to kind of share your life story and your journey with them?
Yeah, well, I love talking to kids of all ages, but there's something really special about getting to connect with kids in Spokane. And that's because I still consider myself a kid from Spokane. I remember what it felt like. I remember that my whole career trajectory was changed when somebody took the time to come and talk to my class when I was a freshman in high school and say, hey, here's what the military academy is all about. Here's what flying airplanes is all about. And so I recognize that every time I reach out to classes, maybe I can change somebody's thought process, or at least start that thought process. I don't want to change their passions, but maybe have them go, wait, I can do this. And it's so special connecting with kids from Spokane, because I can look at the kids right in the eye and in all honesty say, I literally sat where you're sitting. If you want to sit where I'm sitting, you can.
We've heard so much talk since basically March in this country and around the world about social distancing. We have this new jargon to words like bubbling up, social distancing, and things that basically you did yourself. Can you kind of relate a little bit more to that experience and how there's a light at the end of the tunnel to this?
Yeah, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's some really special things that can happen, even though we are all socially distanced. And one of my crewmates on space station used to say that, remember that it's going to end. And after it ends, you're going to look back at this time and there's going to be things that you miss about it. And so, and try to key in on those. And I think for a lot of people, it's that we are spending a lot more time with our core people, whatever that looks like for us, whoever's in our household, we're spending more time with them. And I kind of think about, like, sometimes our lives are a big snow globe, right? And this whole situation right now has really made all the snow settle. And we're like this little core in the middle of the snow globe. And some of us are looking around and spending time with that core for the first time and really looking at ourselves. And I think it can be a really big time of personal growth. And so maybe for some, it's just going to be appreciating what we have. Or maybe for some, it's going to be changing, when we can shake up our snow globes again, changing what that looks like. But we're spending time with that core. And I think that can be shocking for some people. For me, it has been a really big eye opener when everything kind of stopped moving around me. And I was like, okay, here I am. But it will end and we will look back on this. And so we just try to appreciate those little things.
You started with a dream when you were a kid and you accomplished one of those dreams. I'd be remiss to ask, I've got to ask, because it is, the day after Election Day. We just had an astronaut, a former astronaut now, go into the Senate. So do you have any dream? What's your next dream? What's your next, there's always another frontier for you to conquer. What's next for Ann McClain?
Yeah, I always tell people to look a few years ahead, and we certainly do. Right now, I'm real busy in the astronaut office after my flight. I've come back, and now I'm a supervisor in the astronaut office, helping other people get their dreams. We have a whole class of astronauts that were selected after me, and they haven't flown, so getting them ready for flight has been really an absolute joy. And we're looking at these lunar landings here in the next while, and so. I am definitely on the NASA train for the long haul. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. It is really fun that we had a former NASA astronaut selected to Congress. He sent him a note and said, our astronaut reunions just got a little bit more high level. Now we're going to have a senator coming back to him. So we'll see. I'd love to come back up to Spokane. That's really where my heart and my roots are, and I'd like to get back up there as well.
Last thing, just what is it about the special bond that we see so many people succeed who are from Spokane, and that bond still remains strong years and years afterwards? What makes Spokane so special? You've traveled the world quite literally. You've been to space. What makes Spokane so special?
I think I never grew up anywhere else other than Spokane, so I only have that experience. But something that I remember growing up is that we really knew the people that went out and were from Spokane, right? Like, everybody knows John Stockton, and everybody knows Bing Crosby, and and Tom Fuller, and all these people that were out there, and it didn't matter what they did, we knew their names. And I felt like the community was proud of them. And I think our local media does a really good job of celebrating Spokane people accomplishments, right? You know, whether it's ballet or basketball or a team or an individual, like we celebrate them. And something that's really special about that I always felt like was Spokane is this great community that I always feel like I have a sense of belonging in. And I think that we have that atmosphere in Spokane. And so I also felt like, hey, if I went and tried to do this and I wasn't successful, I can come right back to Spokane. It's like this kind of safe landing spot.
Great. Thank you so much. Rachel, I'll just kind of leave the floor open, but just thank you so much for taking some extra time and answering questions and hanging out.
Sure. It's great to see you.
Well, I know your time is short. I don't know if you have a question, and I don't mean to put Olivia on the spot. Olivia, like first day when I said we were studying Mars, she was like, I want to be an astronaut. And so I had her stay back, and I don't know, Olivia, you have any burning questions for Anne before she has to go? No, it's okay. Olivia, you're muted.
Okay, yeah, it wouldn't let me unmute. I had one question, was it hard like growing up with everybody telling you because you'd mentioned that people had said no, you should find a different dream and stuff. Was it hard hearing that and actually getting to the spot you are now?
You know, it was hard hearing that. But here's the thing, you don't have the power to pick what people are going to say to you, but you have the power to pick which ones you listen to. Because I'll tell you, the other impactful conversation I had was out at Fairchild Air Force Base. My dad used to take me out to the air shows there all the time. And I remember climbing around this jet when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And I got all brave and I told the pilot that I wanted to be a military pilot. And he goes, yeah, you can do that. He's like, I'd love to have you join us. And that's in about 5 years, you could very well be flying this. And that really struck me. And I was like, this person that is flying a military aircraft just told me that I can do it. And I'm going to listen to that person, right? And that really stuck with me. But it is hard to hear. There are times when you are going to be the one that has to motivate you the most, which is why I say you got to follow your passion, because in every career, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, if you're doing it for somebody else, then at 11 o'clock at night, when you have to find your 2nd gear, your 5th gear to keep studying for a test or to fly away to a city you don't know, you're not gonna have the strength to do that unless it's something that you inside your heart really want. So it's incredibly hard to hear no, but hopefully I'll have a little effect that pilot had. Olivia, you can do it no matter what. And you're gonna take a step backwards along the way. You're gonna fail at something, and something is gonna scare the living crud out of you all along the way. But you can do it. You can do it.
Nice. Well, I know it's 12 o'clock, and I know your deadline is kind of 12 o'clock. I truly appreciate your time and making an impact on my students. So thank you so much for your time. And John, I see you down there. Thank you as well for all the coordinating.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for inspiring these guys. I can't wait to see what they do.
Okay. And then Sam, did you want to talk to me still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be great if I could. Can I interview you and Olivia?
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
For sure. Okay.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ann. Great. Well, so who's got to get out first? Who's got the next class?
It's fine. I'm skipping the rest of the day, so it's no big deal.
And is Olivia okay too?
Yeah, she's in my class next period, so we're going to skip together.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys are playing hooky together. That's just fine.
Yeah.
Well, Mrs. Kettner, I'll start with you. Did you ever think in a million years this thing was going to come together, and how cool was it?
In a million years? Well, you kind of know. I put it out on Twitter, and I just know the power of Twitter. You know, it can be positive, it can be really negative. I just remember I was trying to get some stuff for the International Space Station, and I'm like, I'm not an expert. And so, you know, you got to get someone that's an expert. And so I just put it out on Twitter, and less than 3 hours later, Anne had responded, and she's like, let's do this. So, you know, I love Twitter when it goes my way. So, yeah.
Well said. The lesson itself, I mean, you talk about the ultimate professional who knows what they're talking about, and the presentation was phenomenal. How would you grade it?
Oh, well, I really don't.
You don't
like
do
grades.
grades, I know.
I don't do grades, but if I had to, her portfolio of evidence was fantastic. A++.
Great. And what was the highlight of it for you?
Just, you know, providing the opportunity for the kids. It's not every day that an astronaut jumps in your Zoom call. You know, bringing that real life experience, and then, you know, like as a female science teacher, having a female astronaut, you know, not only is she from Spokane, but you know, trying to bring along my girl scientists in my class. I think that's fantastic.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know, including my buddy over at Greenacres and giving him the experience as well. You know, as many kids as possible that can be a part of the experience was enjoyable for sure. Memorable.
Great. Okay, well, you're off the hook. I can ask Olivia a couple questions off the Budweiser hot seat. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, Olivia, how cool was that?
It was crazy seeing her. Like, I've been waiting forever. As soon as Ms. Kettner said something about it, I was like, I just got shaky. I was like, okay, we're having an astronaut. Like, this is crazy.
When Anne was talking about her childhood and her journey, could you completely relate to what she was talking about?
Yeah, because around the same age as when I have always wanted to work at NASA, and an astronaut has always seemed like really cool to me. And I also kind of want to be like part of the hidden figures part of it, like the math side, like she was talking about. And I don't know, it was just like, I feel like I could relate to her a lot with her like growing up and actually like being successful with that. So it kind of like told me like there's a possibility you could be successful too.
Probably your hope and dream of being an astronaut, it gets filled sometimes, and sometimes naturally it kind of gets deflated. Right now, I would imagine you've got to be on cloud nine thinking, I can totally do this.
Yeah.
Is that what were you thinking when you heard that? Did you kind of have a moment where you're hearing it and you're like, okay, this let's do this?
Yeah. And like, because at first, like when I was telling Ms. Kettner like that I wanted to work at NASA and stuff, I didn't have very much motivation, and like Ms. Kettner's been a big help with like motivation and stuff. And then hearing Anne like hear that, like say that was just like, it just kind of like boosted me, like, okay, yeah, this is possible, like it's going to happen.
And how long have you been following Anne's journey? Like from what age, and what's your first memory? All of that stuff is as it relates to wanting to be an astronaut.
I'd say probably like, do you mean like following Anne like as her, or like as if I was in her shoes?
Like just knowing that somebody from Spokane went into space.
That's just, it seems crazy to me because like Spokane's kind of small, and like it's not really like a place like a lot of people look down on. I mean, not like look down on, but like look into. So like it's kind of crazy knowing that somebody from Spokane like had that dream and then actually like made it there. And I don't know, it's just kind of cool knowing that like my hometown, I have somebody like to look up to.
Anne showed a lot of videos and pictures. What was the coolest part? What's going to stand out most, what you saw in the presentation?
The thing that stood out most was when she was on the spacewalk and you could see Earth from behind her. I thought that was like the best thing that I've seen. Like that was just so crazy and fascinating.
What are you going to do next?
What do you mean? Like,
how are you going to make this dream reality now? What are you going to do?
Continue studying and continue pursuing my dreams, I guess, and just try to stay on task and focus and just hope for the best.
Great. Thank you so much. You're a great interview. You've got that part nailed down.
Thank you.
Great. Mrs. Kettner, back to you.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I'm in the middle of a sports cast. That was my other dream besides being
Yeah.
a teacher.
You can
Taking
still
your
do
job.
it. You can still do it.
Taking your
Mrs.
job.
Kettner.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're good to go. Sam, when do you anticipate we
Yeah.
will?
So we'll run this tomorrow morning on the Wake Up Show, and then I'm going to give them content, as we call it, that they can run in the newscast for the evenings as well. So if you don't want to wake up that early, but I would imagine sometime in the 6 to 7 o'clock hour, and we'll put stuff online as well on khq.com.
Awesome. Okay. I know Jim Allen, do you have anything before we go? Oh, he can't unmute. Hang on.
Do you want me to unmute him?
I think he can now. I don't know if he has anything. I don't want to ignore him.
Or can he put anything in chat?
He should be good to go if he. Okay. Speak now, forever hold your peace.
I'm going to stop the record on this. What I'll do, Mrs. Kettner, is I will, is anybody recording it on your end as well?